This video is kind of some clarifications about the ongoing subject matter about what does Islam teach its followers regarding the murder or the butchering of innocent people who don't agree or accept their religious beliefs. And Obama has, since he took office, said that this is not a war against Islam. George Bush, I know, said the same thing, but what they don't see in this whole picture is that a part of the teachings of the Quran, which is their holy doctrine, is that there's a stipulation called a holy jihad. Now, jihad is basically war. This means you can initiate it without having to ask for permission. If you think somebody is what they call us, an infidel, that gives them total justification for executing people, causing war. And when he says it's extremism, it is not based on some groups who go too far with it, because it's actually written totally in their Quran that this is an allowed and permissible thing. And it's hard to believe how can the world recognize Islam if it teaches hate and violence to its followers. Now, I'll tell you another thing. He says that Islam is not the practice or the actual worship of hate. But when you have somebody like the Paris newspapers recently did an article with Muhammad, an artistic shot of him on their cover, that is extremism for the Muslims and the Islamics to retaliate by killing those people. Now, Obama would say, oh, well, that's just a select group of people who went too far with it. Well, it's not extremism if it's actually stated that way in the Quran. And if you're taught it from the day you're born and you're in the cradle and they're already teaching you those prayers every single day all your life, then you have to grasp the whole picture, which is they can use that as an excuse whenever they want to. They don't have to try to convince people sometimes, well, it's allowed here, but it's not allowed there. It's like if it's here and if it's written down, then you have to say this is a wrong religion to have, because you can confuse your enemy anytime you want and say this is part of our religion, that killing people is permissible, and only because of the fact that you don't believe our religion. Now, I'll give you an example of who they hate. Christians. Jesus always taught love for each other, love for your enemies. He never advocated, he never spoke anywhere in the Bible about murder was justified, killing was justified. That in itself says that when somebody reads the Bible, they're going to pick out a verse where God says, kill your enemy because you are being despised, you're being isolated or ostracized by somebody else that don't agree with you. He never said that anywhere in the Bible. And does it make sense that in the world, especially in the United States, there is an attitude of hate coming against Christians who do not practice or advocate hate or violence? But yet the Muslims are looked at as angels because they're the unknown people. You know, we don't know that much about Muslims. We don't know that much about Islam. So we have to open our arms to them and accept them, even though everything we've seen so far has proven that they are the extremists, because they have, as a part of their etiquette under the Quran, to kill people. And in Muslim countries right today, if you are found guilty of any crime, they put you in the ground, bury you up to your neck, and then they chop your head off. Now, is that not barbarism? if that is actually part of their religious etiquette, which is if you do something wrong, we're not going to punish you, we're just going to kill you outright. And they still say that that's a justified action under their Bible, the Quran. So I would say to those who believe that Islam is not the enemy, that Muslims are not the enemy of this terror that we face all around the world, go to their Quran and read it. And I know I've read things in the encyclopedia that says that it teaches love, peace, and all the rest of it, but if they can have as one of their criteria a stipulated holy jihad, then there's a serious problem of interpretation between what it says and what people want to believe that it says. Because that's, to me, that's the most clearest yes or no answer. Is it a hate religion? Does it teach hate, murder, killing, all the rest of it? Based on what it says in their text, it is, because it advocates that. It teaches it. That's a very, very dangerous situation to teach somebody something like that. And then as they grow older, they become more and more fatalistic, because they already know from their teachings that killing people is allowed and it's actually advocated. And so as they do it more and more, what does the world do in reaction to like ISIS and the Al-Qaeda and all these other groups that have practiced and actually carried out terrorism? It's all based upon the idea that they're saying these are fanatics of Islam. But at the heart of it is the inevitable fact that their teachings is actually advocating hate, and it practices it, and it actually carries out those attitudes against innocent people. And I would say the Quran, the teachings of Muhammad, they cannot be peace and love if their followers carry out the opposite against people. Benghazi is another perfect example. When the United States embassy was attacked and the government comes forward and says, oh, well, this just retaliation against a video. Well, there again is that centerpiece that the Quran teaches them, that the jihad is an acceptable retaliatory action against people who don't believe or don't accept their philosophies. That's not only unethical and wrong, but it's criminal. And we don't, as a nation, at least here in the United States, we don't see the fact that you teach something that does not advocate love or peace in its entirety, then it can't be seen as a religion. And instead, the attitude of society is to change its entire focus and say, well, let's look at the only good things about the Quran, instead of saying, let's look at it as a whole document and say, is that allowed or is it not allowed to kill people? And then if you can say, that's wrong, killing, and then say, that's it, then, don't accept it or acknowledge that it's there, because all you're going to do by loving them or accepting them is to advocate that same philosophy against other people. Hate, kill, massacre. And in 2,000 years, as far as Muhammad being on earth, that has been what the Islamics have done against, if anybody, the Jews since. And now they're doing it against everybody else. You don't believe their philosophy? Bam, you're dead. They just shoot you or cut your head off. And they've done that, sadly, in several instances in Europe right now. How many men have they killed who are journalists? They bring them out in jumpsuits, orange jumpsuits. They decapitate them right on camera. And what does society say about that? Well, yeah, they're outraged that they did it, but then kind of like there's this subliminal suggestion to society that, okay, so they did it, big deal. They're Muslims. They're allowed to do that because that's part of their religion. It's like, wrong. You have to see what they're doing and say, this is not right, and we should not sit by and let them do it, because we have to have tolerance for every kind of religion. That's not right. That should never happen. Society should say, this is it. We draw the line. You know, Buddhists don't teach hate. No other religion I know of teaches hate to the degree of extremism which the jihad in the Quran specifies, which to me that's just like, that's the smoking gun. That's the bullet right there. That religion cannot be something that's really recognizable if it kills or has in its criteria that killing's right, or it's permissible. So if somebody in our political system ever does hear this video, I would say to you, think again about what does the Quran really say to people who are innocent bystanders, which is, you don't accept us, you're dead. And that's exactly how they see it. And the more that there is of these terrorists that come out and say, well, I was led because of what so-and-so said, or inevitably it all centers around the Quran again, and that's what they're all taught, then you have to ask yourself, well, why? Why do we tolerate it? Why don't we just say, let's get it out of our midst, and that means get it out of the United States. In other words, if they want to practice this stuff, go someplace else where it already is obviously the entire nation's philosophy, which makes sense. You're going to clean up your own backyard first before you try to resolve everyone else's. And you can't do it if you're going to let them live here in this country and advocate. What was it, 3 or 4 months ago, 100+ Americans actually joined ISIS. Why? Why would they do that? Well, because if they're followers of Islam, they already know what their whole justification for killing is, which is, you're an infidel. You're an unbeliever. You don't believe what we believe, so therefore we're going to just kill you. And that's quite obviously the reason why so many people are just so perverted into believing this teaching, this practice. And you know, a lot of people have died because someone wanted to express their opinions. And, you know, you just have to ask yourself the question, if they can get so upset about a picture of Muhammad, where will they end it? Where are they going to draw their own line and say, okay, we can't just keep doing this because somebody else don't agree with us? Can they do that? No. Because in their philosophy and in their teachings, murder is justified. It's permitted. 3,000 people died on 9/11. Why? Because those hijackers, who were Islam and Muslims, their credence was that as long as they do this for Allah or Muhammad, that he will welcome them into his paradise. And so they killed all those innocent people because of it. And I just cannot believe that in our society, the philosophy of what's right or wrong has been totally turned upside down. And now today, people accept what they see and what they hear with indifference, because they've totally gotten the attitude that human life means nothing if it affects one religious group being allowed to take it because of what they believe in. And that's wrong. We should not ever permit that to happen in this country or anywhere. You know, I mean, love and peace is the only thing that ever makes sense, because it means everybody gets along with each other. And as long as we recognize the Islamic belief and we say it's not a war against them, that means we can just basically justify everything they do. And Obama has been doing that. And I'd say probably whoever president will be will do the same thing. So thanks for letting me share my opinions and my interests about this subject.